So, what if the real blueprint for our companies, the actual architecture, isn't found in some dusty org chart, but in the everyday language we use? That's the fascinating, kind of mind-bending idea we're diving into today.
So let me just start by asking a pretty provocative question. What if all those process maps, all those PowerPoints we spend so much time on, what if they're completely missing the point?
Yeah, think about it. What if a company isn't some machine that you can just engineer and fine-tune? What if it's actually something more organic, more alive, something like a massive collection of ongoing conversations, each with its own unique vocabulary and its own shared stories?
Well, once you start to see things that way, your whole approach has to change. You've got to stop mapping systems, and you start mapping meaning.
And there's actually a name for this. It's called language-based analysis, or LBA for short. And it is all about mapping the meanings, the specific terms, and the hidden narratives people use day to day to understand how a place really works, under the surface.
So let's just be super clear about this shift. The old way, the traditional way, is all about structure, right? We map systems, functions, capabilities. But LBA, it completely flips the script. The focus is now entirely on meaning, mapping the concepts, the stories, the different vocabularies. And this isn't just some small tweak, it is a fundamental change in how you see everything.
And here's where it gets really deep. You see, traditional methods are obsessed with making sure the systems can talk to each other. We call that technical interoperability. But LBA is focused on making sure the people are actually talking about the same thing. That's semantic interoperability. This is the big idea. Language stops being just, documentation on the side. It becomes the architecture itself.
Okay, I know, this might still sound a little abstract. So let's make it real. Let's tell a story about a supply chain.
So I want you to picture this massive, global company. But forget the process flow charts for a second. We're going to do what LBA does, and we're just going to listen in on the actual conversations happening between all the different teams.
First up, we pop into demand planning. And what do you hear? You hear things like competence intervals and demand signal noise. It's a very specific, very statistical kind of language.
But then, you just walk down the hall to manufacturing ops, and boom, the dialect changes instantly. Suddenly, it's all about batch sizes and plant utilization.
And finally, you get to the logistics team, and they are completely obsessed with load consolidation and hitting their on-time in-full targets. You see what's happening, right? Each group is speaking its own language, and they're all perfectly valid, but they're completely different from each other.
And this is where the trouble starts. Take a simple term, like product availability. What does that actually mean? Well, if you ask the warehouse, it means the stock is logged in our system. Simple. But to the retailer, it means I can physically have it on my shelf tomorrow. Those are two radically different realities, and they're hidden inside the same two words.
And this isn't just about operations either. This creates a serious clash of strategy. Ask the planning team about forecast accuracy, and they'll get all excited about their statistical models. Ask the sales team the same question, and they'll just say, did we hit the number we promised the board? They are using the exact same words to describe two totally different goals. They're not even playing the same game.
And honestly, it goes even deeper. You start to realize that each team is basically trading in a different currency of value. Procurement, they want the lowest possible cost. Sustainability, they want a climate-positive supply chain. Customer service needs to maximize fill rates no matter what. And get this, none of them are wrong. But these aren't just different metrics. They're fundamentally competing worldviews.
So this confusion, it gets baked right into our technology. I mean, think about a single data field in a system labeled product class. To sales, that's just a category for their catalog. To R&D, it's a specific chemical formulation. To logistics, it's a storage requirement. One label, three completely different meanings, and that creates this silent chaos humming in the background of every single report.
So, okay, how do you actually fix this mess? Well, LBA gives you a whole new toolkit. Instead of a boring org chart, you could build a semantic map to visually see how a word like availability connects differently across all the teams. Or, how cool is this? You could use a discourse heat map that literally glows red over the words that cause the most arguments in meetings. You can even create lexicon contracts, which are basically treaties where everyone finally agrees on what a critical term actually means. It is a completely new way to see your organization.
Now, this whole idea is so much bigger than just fixing one supply chain. So let's zoom out for a minute and look at the broader implications here.
When you start putting language first, you find it has this massive impact in some really interesting and important areas. And it really splits pretty evenly across three big ones: inclusion, AI alignment, and good old change management.
First up, inclusion. I mean, think about it. We've all been in that meeting where a new dashboard is rolled out and it's filled with jargon that only the finance team understands, right? A language-first approach helps you spot exactly where you might be accidentally leaving people out of the conversation. It helps you make communication genuinely more inclusive for everyone.
Next, AI alignment. And wow, this is critical right now. If you train your shiny new AI tool on generic textbook language, it is never going to understand that product class means 3 different things in your company. Focusing on your specific internal language is really the only way to make sure your AI tools are actually effective and, frankly, safe. And finally, change management. Way too often, we train people on the how of a new system, all the clicks and the buttons, but we totally forget the why. A language-first approach focuses on creating shared meaning, not just shared mechanics. And when people are actually aligned on the why, adoption isn't just faster, it's way more meaningful.
And really, this entire idea can be summed up in one pretty powerful sentence. Transformation fails not because systems don't connect, but because meanings don't align.
Which leaves all of us with one final crucial question to take back to our own work. Where do the conversations break down in your organization? Because if you can find that, you might just find the real architecture. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.